Settle in now, dear listener, into this soft space where the world's quiet wonders unfold like a gentle breath across the evening sky. Imagine yourself reclining in a place of utmost comfort, perhaps beneath a canopy of stars or wrapped in the hush of your own room, as we embark together on a tranquil journey through the volcanic wonders of our Earth, realm where the planet's fiery psychology reveals itself in whispers of heat and stone. This is not a tale of sudden fury, but a meditative exploration of the deep, enduring rhythms that shape our world, inviting you to release the day's tensions and drift toward peaceful slumber. If this gentle exploration brings you comfort, consider subscribing to join more such journeys, where the Earth's ancient wisdom becomes a lullaby for modern rest. You have felt that subtle stir within yourself, have not you? Quiet build-up of thoughts or emotions that seek a harmonious release. Just as the Earth holds its own inner fires, so too do we, and in understanding these volcanic foundations, we find a pathway to deeper calm. Let your eyelids grow heavy now, your breath slow and even, as we begin with the gentle foundations, the emergence of these magnificent phenomena from the planet's hidden depths. Picture the Earth, not as a static sphere, but as a living entity, its surface a thin skin over vast, flowing layers that pulse with ancient energy. At the heart of volcanic birth lies the dance of tectonic plates, those immense slabs of rock that float upon the semi-fluid layer below, shifting ever so gradually over ends like slow-moving puzzle pieces finding their place in an endless cosmic game. Scientists have mapped these plates drifting across the surface for over 4 billion years, each one averaging about 50 miles thick, moving at rates no faster than your fingernails grow, a few inches per year at most, yet cumulatively reshaping the globe in ways that inspire quiet awe. In places like the Pacific Ring of Fire, where plates converge and one slides beneath another in a process called subduction, the descending slab melts into magma, that molten essence rising like a sigh from the depths. 'Tis process as natural as a tide pool, driven by the slow convection currents in the mantle below, heat from the core rising, cooling at the top, and sinking again in a cycle that has sculpted continents and oceans alike. Like a cosmic potter's wheel spinning through geological time, think of it as the Earth's gentle breathing, an inhale of heat from deep within, an exhale of renewal at the surface. More than half of the world's active volcanoes above sea level encircle the Pacific Ocean in this ring of fire, while beneath the ocean's surface, 3/4 of all volcanic activity occurs unseen, building underwater mountain ranges along spreading ridges where plates pull apart. These movements are not random but patterned, with subtle precursors signaling the stirrings below, quiet conversation between rock and heat that has been unfolding since the planet's infancy. You have sensed such patterns in your own life, perhaps those gentle rhythms that guide your days, the ebb and flow of energy that tells you when to rest and when to rise, mirroring the Earth's impatient cycles. Allow your mind to descend now, gently, into this subterranean world, where the mantle's convection forms the cradle of volcanic emergence. Deep within, about 1,800 miles of solid, but slowly flowing rock lies between the crust and the core, heated by the molten iron heart of our planet, and stirred by temperature differences that create vast, sweeping motions. Picture warm rock rising like a bubble in honey, spreading sideways beneath the crust, then cooling and descending again in broad, majestic currents that take millions of years to complete a single cycle. This uniformity means that volcanic activity often arises from consistent processes, where heat gathers in focused columns called mantle plumes, rising from the very boundary where the mantle meets the outer core, nearly 2,000 miles below your feet. These plumes pierce through the overlying plates like candle burning through wax, forming hotspots far from plate boundaries. Islands of volcanic activity in the middle of vast tectonic expanses. Think of it as the Earth's quiet introspection, where deep-seated warmth gathers and ascends, much like a meditative breath that builds from within to refresh the surface. The Hawaiian Islands tell this story beautifully, each island a chapter in a chain created as the Pacific Plate drifted northwest over a stationary hotspot, the oldest islands worn smooth by time and weather, while the youngest still pulse with active lava flows. Scientists studying the longest preserved linear volcanic ridge on Earth, feature stretching over 5,000 kilometers beneath the Indian Ocean, have discovered that these hotspots are not perfectly fixed but move subtly, responding to changes in the shallow mantle's flow like dancers, adjusting to the rhythm of music only they can hear. This discovery reveals the mantle as a more dynamic, responsive system than once imagined, with plumes that can spread laterally, influence distant ridges, and interact with spreading centers in ways that shape ocean basins over tens of millions of years. As you listen, let your awareness soften, noticing any faint sensations in your body. Subtle warmth of your own breath mirroring the Earth's inner heat, the gentle pulse in your wrists echoing the planet's ancient heartbeat. Emerging patterns in volcanic activity show that precursors often begin with imperceptible shifts. A slight inflation of the ground as magma accumulates below, like bread dough rising in a warm kitchen, or a series of faint tremors like distant whispers carried on the wind. Advanced monitoring systems now use satellites to measure ground deformation with exquisite precision, detecting swellings of mere centimeters over months or years, while machine learning algorithms analyze decades of seismic data to identify common patterns shared among volcanoes worldwide. These technological eyes watch over more than 24 volcanoes across the globe, finding that eruption precursors exhibit remarkable similarities, kind of universal language spoken by the Earth regardless of location or volcano type. Take the axial seamount off Oregon's coast, where scientists have been monitoring an undersea volcano so predictable in its behavior that they have forecast its next eruption for some time in the near future based on escalating seismic activity and measurable ground inflation. This testament to how our understanding evolves shows us harmonizing with nature's rhythms, rather than fearing them, learning to read the Earth's subtle signals, the way you might sense a loved one's mood from the gentlest change in their voice. In this gentle emergence, volcanoes embody the Earth's fiery psychology, a metaphor for the transformative power of release. Just as mindfulness practices teach us to observe inner pressures without judgment, allowing them to dissipate like steam from a fumarole, so too does the planet manage its internal forces with patient wisdom accumulated over billions of years. You have experienced this in quieter ways, perhaps, the relief after expressing a long-held emotion, leaving space for calm like clearing a cluttered room to breathe freely again. Let that sense of release wash over you now, as we linger on the foundational warmth of plate tectonics, feeling how the Earth's patience mirrors the peace we seek in our own hurried lives. Imagine the plates themselves as vast puzzle pieces, their edges grinding or pulling apart in the slow, inexorable waltz measured not in heartbeats, but in geological ages, at divergent boundaries, like the mid-Atlantic ridge that runs down the center of the Atlantic Ocean. Like a great submerged spine, magma wells up to form new crust, a creative act of emergence that has widened oceans over billions of years, at rates scientists can now measure with precision, several centimeters annually, yet cumulatively enough to have opened entire ocean basins since the age of dinosaurs. In subduction zones, the sinking plate dehydrates as it descends into the hotter depths, releasing water that lowers the melting point of the overlying rock, birthing chains of volcanoes like those along the Andes Mountains, their snow-capped peaks standing as monuments to this underground alchemy. Recent findings emphasize how these processes are interconnected with environmental factors in ways previously unrecognized. Melting glaciers, for instance, reduce the weight pressing down on volcanic systems, potentially influencing their activity by changing the pressure balance that keeps magma contained. This interplay reminds us of the delicate balance in our own lives, where external changes can stir inner depths, yet lead to growth if met with gentle awareness rather than resistance. Pause here for a soft moment of immersion, a chance to integrate what we have explored into your body's own knowing. Direct your attention inward now, to the imagined core of the earth far below, feeling the subtle pulse of convection like a heartbeat far beneath the surface, ancient and steady. Notice any sensations of warmth spreading through your limbs, perhaps a gentle heaviness, as muscles release their daily holding. Hold this gentle focus as you breathe slowly, counting 30 soft breaths in and out, allowing the mind to settle like mist on a quiet valley, each exhale releasing a little more tension. And as you complete this quiet moment, let any lingering thoughts drift away like leaves on a slow stream, your awareness sinking deeper into the narrative of wonder that surrounds you, cradled by the earth's patient rhythms. Returning now to the hot spots, those enigmatic points where plumes defy plate boundaries, piercing the lithosphere like focused beams of energy that persist for millions of years, while the surface plates drift overhead. The Hawaiian Islands, born from such a plume, illustrate this beautifully, each island a step in the chain, as the Pacific plate drifts over the stationary hotspot at about 3 inches a year, with the oldest islands in the northwest deeply eroded, covered in lush vegetation, are the Big Island to the southeast still builds itself higher with fresh lava flows. Research on how these plumes interact with mid-ocean ridges reveals they can spread laterally through the upper mantle, influencing volcanic activity thousands of kilometers away, and creating the longest linear volcanic features preserved on our planet's surface. These findings paint a picture of plumes as mushroom-shaped structures, with bulbous heads between 500 and 1,000 kilometers in diameter spreading out beneath the lithosphere, fed by narrow tails connecting to enormous blobs of hot rock anchored at the core mantle boundary. Let this knowledge unfold like dawnlight, illuminating the interconnectedness of all things with a gentle radiance that asks nothing of you but peaceful attention. Volcanoes are not isolated events, but part of Earth's grand symphony, where tectonic forces harmonize with mantle dynamics to foster life itself. Volcanic soils among the most nutrient-rich on the planet, atmospheres shaped by ancient outgassings that created the very air we breathe. In your own fiery psychology, recognize the parallels. The buildup of daily stresses, like magma chambers slowly filling with molten rock, and the gentle release through breath or reflection, mirroring the planet's resilient cycles of pressure and relief. Modern monitoring tools track these foundations using satellites that measure ground deformation from space, offering insights into precursors that could save lives by providing hours or days of warning before volcanic awakening. As we delve deeper into these foundations, consider the sensory tapestry of this emergence. Faint rumble of shifting plates, too low for human ears, yet felt in the soul as a reminder of impermanence and change. The way all solid-seeming things are actually in constant gentle motion. Picture the mantle's flow as a river of molten rock, viscous and glowing with inner light, carrying heat from the core's forge to the surface in convection cells that span hemispheres, moving with the patience of geological time. Research on plumes beneath Iceland shows how one has spread across the North Atlantic over 60 million years, thinning the lithosphere and enabling widespread volcanism by exploiting weak zones in the plates, like water finding cracks in stone. This spreading, like ideas diffusing through a quiet mind, underscores the wonder of transformation without catastrophe, the way change can be both profound and gradual, powerful and peaceful. Breathe into this now, allowing the imagery to soothe like a warm compress on tired muscles. You have sensed that inner warmth before, perhaps in a moment of quiet contemplation, where tensions melt away like ice under geothermal springs, those heated pools where the Earth's internal warmth breaks through to create oases of comfort. Studies of geothermal systems show how even non-eruptive activity releases pressure in controlled ways, maintaining balance through countless small releases, rather than catastrophic bursts, much as mindfulness dissolves accumulated worries through daily practice, nurturing equilibrium in small, consistent doses rather than waiting for crisis to force change. This gentle management of internal forces demonstrates a wisdom we would do well to emulate in our own lives. Linger here on the gentle precursors, those harbingers of volcanic awakening that whisper of changes to come. Increased seismicity involves earthquake clusters that signal magma intrusion as rising molten rock fractures surrounding stone, creating distinctive patterns that monitoring stations can now detect and analyze using sophisticated algorithms. Machine learning breakthroughs have revealed that certain types of earthquakes, mixed-frequency events combining high and low tremors, tend to increase in number in the hours before an eruption, offering a potential forecasting tool that works across different volcano types. Environmental influences weave into this pattern as well. The relationship between melting glaciers and volcanic activities suggests that as ice caps thin, they remove overlying pressure that has kept magma stable for millennia, potentially awakening dormant sites in ways that connect climate change to volcanic hazards in an intimate feedback loop. This interconnected web evokes all Earth's systems in constant dialogue like musicians in an orchestra, each instrument contributing to the greater harmony. In this foundational exploration, we see volcanoes as teachers of patience and power, their emergence a slow unfolding that invites us to mirror that grace in our own hurried lives, to remember that the most profound transformations often begin with subtle shifts barely perceptible to those not paying close attention. The mantle's convection, hot spots plumes, and place dance form the bedrock of understanding, with research affirming their predictable, yet profound nature, showing us that beneath apparent chaos lies deep pattern and purpose. As your body relaxes further into the support beneath you, let the weight of the day dissolve like rock melting into magma, solid concerns becoming fluid possibilities in the crucible of rest. Now, let your imagination settle on the gathering elements of the phenomena, the subtle build-up of heat and pressure in the depths far below, observing any imagined shifts in the flow or hush of this underground world. Notice how your breath has perhaps slowed without effort, how your thoughts have become more spacious, less urgent, more willing to simply drift. Hold this gentle focus for 40 soft breaths, counting each inhale and exhale as a gift of oxygen to tired cells, surrendering to the warmth that lingers like sunlight absorbed by stone throughout a summer day. Allow each number to fade as soon as you count it. No need to hold anything, just this moment and the next, breathing in the earth's patient wisdom, breathing out the day's accumulated tensions. And when you complete these 40 breaths, let yourself simply be, suspended in this tranquil awareness as we prepare to explore deeper layers. From this place of quiet emergence, we sense the core aspects beginning to build, the elements coalescing in anticipation like clouds gathering before gentle rain. But for now, rest in this foundational warmth, this understanding of how volcanoes are born from the Earth's deepest conversations with itself, allowing it to cradle you toward deeper layers of relaxation and wonder as our journey continues seamlessly onward, each part flowing into the next like lava finding its path, like breath following breath, like sleep following wakefulness in nature's endless, perfect cycle. As this viscous warmth cradles your awareness, let it carry you gently deeper now, into the realm where the earth's molten essence takes on character and form, where core aspects blend like colors in an artist's palette, to create the diverse expressions we call volcanoes. Picture yourself descending through layers of understanding, each one revealing new textures and temperatures, new ways that simple elements combine to create complexity and wonder. Just as your own inner world contains varied emotions and thoughts, each with its own quality and temperature, so too does the earth hold different types of magma, each with its own personality and potential, its own way of moving through the world. Let your muscles soften further now, your jaw unclenching, your shoulders releasing their daily grit, as we explore these elemental aspects, with the curiosity of a child discovering seashells on a beach, each one different, each one perfectly itself. At the heart of this diversity lies silica, that simple compound of silicon and oxygen that proves to be the master sculptor of volcanic behavior, determining whether magma flows like honey or barely moves at all. Silica content, measured as a percentage of the magma's composition, ranges from about 45% in the most fluid types to over 70% in the thickest, and this single variable orchestrates the entire symphony of volcanic expression. Think of silica molecules as tiny chains that link together when abundant, forming networks that tangle like yarn, making the magma sticky and resistant to flow, what scientists call viscosity, but what we might simply call the magma's temperament, its willingness to move and change. When silica content is low, these molecular chains remain short, and the magma stays fluid, able to travel great distances from its source, like a river finding its way to the sea, carrying heat and minerals to enrich distant lands. Imagine watching thick honey versus water being poured. Honey clings and moves slowly, building up in mounds, while water spreads quickly and evenly. This is the essence of how silica shapes volcanic landscapes, determining not just how magma flows but whether eruptions whisper or shout. Basaltic magma, the most common type on Earth, and the foundation of ocean floors, contains that low silica content of around 50% or less, making it incredibly fluid even at temperatures exceeding 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. This fluidity allows gases dissolved within it to escape easily, like bubbles rising gently from a glass of sparkling water, preventing the dangerous buildup of pressure that leads to explosive events. You have seen this temperament in videos of Hawaiian eruptions, where glowing orange rivers cascade down volcanic slopes in graceful sheets, their beauty mesmerizing precisely because they move with such unhurried confidence, shaping the land incrementally, peacefully, over time. Breathe into this fluidity now, feeling your own breath move easily through your body like that low viscosity magma, no resistance, just natural flow responding to gentle pressure. Basaltic magma also carries high amounts of iron and magnesium, elements that make it dense and hot, erupting at temperatures between 1000 and 1200 degrees Celsius, hotter than the melting point of most metals, yet flowing with the consistency of smooth peanut butter when in motion. These characteristics give rise to shield volcanoes, those broad, gently sloped mountains that resemble a warrior's shield lying flat on the ground, built layer by patient layer through thousands of effusive eruptions that spread lava over vast areas. Mauna Loa in Hawaii stands as the largest volcano on Earth when measured from its base on the ocean floor, rising over 30,000 feet and containing enough basalt to blanket an entire continent, yet its slopes are so gentle you could walk up them without feeling you are climbing a mountain. As silica content increases into the intermediate range, around 52 to 63%, we encounter andesitic magma, named for the Andes Mountains where this composition commonly appears at subduction zones. This magma has a thicker consistency, more like smooth caramel than honey, erupting at temperatures between 800 and 1000 degrees Celsius, cooler than basaltic but still searingly hot. The increased viscosity means gases do not escape as easily, creating more pressure and leading to eruptions that alternate between flowing lava and explosive events that hurl fragments skyward. This intermediate temperament builds stratovolcanoes, also called composite volcanoes. Those classic cone-shaped mountains with steep slopes that grace postcards and paintings, Mount Fuji, Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens. These volcanoes grow through layers of solidified lava alternating with layers of volcanic ash and debris, each eruption adding a new chapter to their geological story, building steep profiles that can reach thousands of meters in height. Let your imagination now picture these majestic peaks, their slopes steepening toward the summit, where fresh snow catches morning light. The contrast between their serene beauty and their potential power, a reminder of nature's duality. Recent research on magma composition reveals that the amount of silica can actually vary during a single eruption, influencing not just the explosion itself, but the seismic tremors that accompany it. Studies of ash collected daily during extended eruptions show silica content rising and falling, like a heartbeat, with higher levels corresponding to stronger tremors, suggesting that monitoring volcanic ash could provide real-time insights into what is happening deep below. This discovery opens new windows into the Earth's fiery psychology, showing how internal compositions drive external behaviors in ways we are only beginning to understand. At the highest silica end of the spectrum lies rhyolitic magma, containing over 63% silica, and erupting at the coolest volcanic temperatures, around 700 to 800 degrees Celsius. This magma moves like cold molasses or thick clay, so viscous that it barely flows at all, often forming steep-sided lava domes that build directly over vents like frozen fountains. The extreme viscosity traps gases with tremendous efficiency, and when pressure finally overcomes the magma's resistance, eruptions can be catastrophically explosive, hurling columns of ash 30 kilometers into the stratosphere and creating pyroclastic flows that race down mountainsides at speeds exceeding 700 kilometers per hour, incinerating everything in their path. Stratovolcanoes fed by rhyolitic magma include some of Earth's most dangerous volcanic systems, capable of eruptions that reshape regional geography and influence global climate for years afterward. Pause here for a gentle immersion, an opportunity to integrate these varying temperaments into your awareness. Direct your attention to the imagined spectrum of magma types, from the fluid grace of basaltic flows to the restrained intensity of rhyolitic chambers, noticing how each has its place in the Earth's expression, how diversity in composition creates diversity in form. Feel your own breath finding its natural rhythm, neither forcing nor restricting, just allowing. Hold this soft focus as you count 45 slow breaths, each one drawing in peace, each one releasing any held tension. Notice how your body mirrors the Earth's patience, how both respond to internal pressures with eventual release, how both contain multitudes within apparent simplicity, and as you complete these breaths, let the counting dissolve, returning to the flowing narrative like a stream rejoining a river, seamless and natural. Beyond silica, volcanic gases play a crucial role in determining eruptive behavior, those invisible players that can transform a gentle flow into an explosive spectacle. Water vapor typically dominates the mix, making up the majority of volcanic gases, followed by carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, hydrogen chloride, and hydrogen fluoride, each contributing to the complex chemistry that drives volcanic activity. Magma at great depths can hold these gases dissolved within it, like carbonation in an unopened bottle of soda. But as magma rises and pressure decreases, gases begin to exsulfate, forming bubbles that expand and push the magma upward with increasing force. The amount of dissolved gas and how easily it can escape determines whether we see peaceful lava fountains or violent explosions that blast rock fragments and ash across entire regions. Think of opening that soda bottle gently versus shaking it first. Difference lies in how quickly gas escapes from solution, creating either a gentle hiss or a dramatic spray. In low viscosity basaltic magma, gas bubbles rise and escape relatively easily, producing those characteristic fire fountains where molten rock sprays upward in graceful arcs but rarely achieves the violence of explosive eruptions. Hawaiian volcanoes demonstrate this beautifully, with near-continuous activity that releases pressure gradually, allowing residents to live relatively near active vents because the eruptions, while spectacular, follow predictable patterns. The gases emerge in manageable quantities, contributing to the mesmerizing displays without building to catastrophic levels, much as steady breathing prevents the buildup of carbon dioxide in our bodies, maintaining equilibrium through constant gentle release. In high-viscosity rhyolitic magma, however, gas bubbles struggle to rise through the thick mixture, remaining trapped like air pockets in bread dough, building pressure that mounts silently until the magma structure can no longer contain it. When the seal finally breaks, the release is sudden and devastating, with magma fragmenting into ash and pumice that shoots skyward in violent columns, powered by the explosive expansion of liberated gases. This is the mechanism behind eruptions like Mount St. Helens in 1980, where an entire mountainside collapsed, and the lateral blast traveling at speeds approaching the sound barrier obliterated forests and took lives, demonstrating how trapped volatile can transform volcanic activity from creation to destruction in moments. The temperature and gas content work together with silica to create a spectrum of possibilities, each volcano finding its place along this continuum based on its unique magmatic recipe. You have felt this principle in subtler ways, perhaps noticing how unexpressed emotions can build pressure within, while regular acknowledgement and release maintain inner peace. Earth's volcanic systems teach us that transformation requires outlets, that pressure must find expression, and that the manner of release depends on the viscosity of what we are holding, whether it flows easily or clings stubbornly to old forms. Research into how magma composition drives volcanic tremor shows that these relationships extend beyond simple cause and effect, revealing complex feedback loops, where chemical changes influence physical behavior, which in turn affects monitoring signals, creating a dance of variables that modern science is learning to interpret with increasing sophistication. Let your awareness drift now to the different volcanic forms that arise from these elemental combinations, the architectural expressions of the Earth's diverse magmatic personalities. Shield volcanoes, born of low silica basaltic magma, grow to enormous dimensions through countless thin lava flows that spread like sheets of molten glass, each one less than a meter thick, but extending for kilometers before cooling and solidifying over hundreds of thousands of years. These layers accumulate into mountains that dominate landscapes. Despite their gentle slopes, Monarchy rises nearly 14,000 feet above sea level, but when you include its base on the ocean floor, it exceeds 33,000 feet, making it taller than Mount Everest, yet climbable without mountaineering equipment because its slopes rarely exceed 10 degrees. The lava that builds these giant erupts at temperatures well over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, so hot and fluid that it forms distinctive textures as it cools. Smooth, ropey Pahoho lava, where the surface wrinkles like skin on cooling chocolate, or rough, jagged lava, where the flow breaks into clinker-like fragments that create difficult walking terrain. Picture these flows advancing slowly enough that you could walk alongside them, watching the glowing interior crack through cooling crust in brilliant orange fissures, feeling the radiant heat from meters away as rock transforms from liquid to solid before your eyes. The scale of shield volcanism staggers the imagination. Hawaii's Kilauea volcano has been erupting almost continuously for decades, adding hundreds of acres of new land to the island through lava flows that enter the ocean in explosive clouds of steam, where molten rock meets water in one of nature's most dramatic material transitions. These volcanoes rarely pose immediate danger to human life because their eruptions are so predictable and their lava moves slowly enough to evacuate, though they can destroy property and infrastructure with implacable, unstoppable advance, demonstrating how even gentle forces become irresistible when sustained over time. Stratovolcanoes present a different architectural philosophy, building upward rather than outward, accumulating steep-sided cones through alternating episodes of lava flows and explosive tephra eruptions. These volcanoes embody the intermediate and high silica compositions, where magma's viscosity prevents it from traveling far, causing it to pile up near the vent in thick layers that create classic mountain forms. Mount Fuji's near-perfect symmetry has made it an icon of volcanic beauty, its slopes steepening from about 5 degrees at the base to over 30 degrees near the summit. a profile that reflects how thicker lavas and volcanic debris accumulate in specific patterns. These volcanoes can grow rapidly in geological terms, building substantial peaks in tens of thousands of years, but they are also less stable than shield volcanoes, subject to sector collapses where entire mountainsides slide away in massive landslides, triggered by earthquakes, eruptions, or simple gravitational stress on steep slopes weakened by hydrothermal alteration. Breathe into this diversity of form, feeling how different internal compositions create different external expressions, how the Earth's creativity manifests in multiple architectural styles, each suited to its particular chemistry and tectonic setting. The volcanic landscape becomes a gallery where magmatic temperaments display themselves through shape and behavior, inviting us to read the Earth's moods in the silhouettes of mountains and the textures of lava fields. Cinder cones, the smallest type of volcano, appear as steep-sided mounds rarely exceeding 500 meters in height, built from fragments ejected during brief, gas-rich eruptions that blast molten rock into the air where it solidifies into cinders before raining back to Earth. These small volcanic features often form on the flanks of larger volcanoes or along fissures where basaltic magma with high gas content emerges in concentrated bursts, creating symmetrical cones that preserve the simple geometry of material falling from a central point, like sap poured from a funnel. The diversity extends to rare and exotic volcanic types that challenge our assumptions about what volcanoes should look like, or what materials they should erupt. Lava domes form when extremely viscous magma extrudes so slowly that it piles up directly over the vent without flowing away, creating bulbous masses that can grow for years before collapsing in devastating pyroclastic avalanches when gravitational stress exceeds structural strength. These domes sometimes form inside the craters of stratovolcanoes after major eruptions, slowly refilling the void like a wound healing from within, though their presence often signals continued activity that could lead to future explosive events. Mount St. Helens has grown a lava dome in its crater since the 1980 eruption, a viscous mass advancing just meters per day, demonstrating how volcanic systems continue evolving long after their most dramatic moments. Let your imagination now settle on these varied forms, each one a perfect expression of its elemental nature, from the spreading shields to the steep composite cones, to the small cinder mounds dotting volcanic landscapes. Notice how your body has perhaps settled more deeply into rest, how the exploration of these elements has itself become meditative, the way understanding can be its own form of relaxation when approached with gentle curiosity rather than forceful analysis. Research continues to reveal how these fundamental aspects interconnect in ways both obvious and subtle. Relationship between magma composition and seismic signals, between gas content and eruption forecasting, between volcanic type and long-term hazard assessment. Each discovery adds depth to our portrait of the Earth's fiery psychology, showing us a planet that processes its internal heat through diverse channels, each one adapted to particular conditions and compositions. Pause now for an extended immersion, allowing these core elements to integrate into your awareness like minerals dissolving into solution. Direct your gentle focus to an imagined cross-section of the Earth's crust, seeing the different magma chambers of various depths, each holding its unique composition, some fluid and hot, some thick and cool, some rich in gases, others relatively dry. Notice how these variations create the volcanic diversity we observe at the surface, how differences in chemistry manifest as differences in form and behavior. Maintain this visualization as you breathe slowly for 60 complete cycles, each breath carrying you deeper into relaxed understanding. Feel the weight of your body fully supported. No effort needed to maintain position, just gravity holding you in perfect comfort. Observe any sensations that arise without judging them, just noticing like watching clouds drift across a sky. And when you complete this quiet interval, let images fade naturally, returning to the flowing narrative as we prepare to explore how these elements translate into action, how potential becomes kinetic in the Earth's ongoing cycles of transformation. From this deepened awareness of volcanic elements, we sense the gathering energy that will manifest in eruptions and flows, the way these fundamental compositions determine the events that follow. The magma's temperament, shaped by silica and gases, by temperature and crystal content, by depth and tectonic setting, creates the preconditions for everything that comes next. Like emotions gathering before expression, like thoughts organizing before speech, these core aspects accumulate in chambers and conduits beneath the surface, waiting for the right combination of circumstances to transition from potential to actual, from hidden to revealed. Understanding these elemental foundations helps us appreciate the events they produce, seeing explosive eruptions not as random violence but as inevitable consequences of specific conditions, seeing gentle lava flows not as fortunate accidents but as expressions of particular magmatic personalities. You have built understanding in similar ways, perhaps accumulating knowledge piece by piece, until patterns emerge, until what seemed complex becomes clear, until you can predict outcomes based on initial conditions. ES psychology reveals itself through these elements, showing us a planet that follows principles, that responds to pressures in predictable ways, that teaches patience through the slow accumulation of lava and sudden insight through explosive release. As your body rests in deeper relaxation now, having absorbed these core aspects of volcanic diversity, allow yourself to drift toward the dynamic processes that will unfold in the next phase of our journey, the key cycles and events that bring these elements to life in spectacular and serene expressions across the planet's restless surface. Now, let your entire awareness settle on the transition from potential to kinetic, from composition to action, observing the imagined moment when magma begins its ascent, when gases start to exsolve, when the earth prepares to exhale. Hold this anticipatory focus through 70 soft breaths, feeling the building energy not as tension, but as potential, at the pause before music begins, the stillness before movement, Allow each breath to deepen your relaxation even as your imagination engages with these gathering forces. And when the count completes, rest in the peaceful awareness that precedes all transformation, that space between states where anything becomes possible. From this place of elemental understanding, we prepare to follow these forces into motion, watching how core aspects manifest in key processes that reshape landscapes and release the Earth's accumulated pressures. But for now, rest in this deepened knowledge of volcanic diversity, allowing it to guide you seamlessly toward the rhythmic events ahead, each moment building naturally on what came before, like lava layers accumulating into mountains, like understanding growing into wisdom through patient, gentle attention to the world's quiet wonders. From this cyclical dance, let us gently follow the dynamic movements that spread outward now, the rhythmic processes and events that translate potential into action, the Earth's patient accumulations suddenly becoming its spectacular releases. Picture yourself suspended between moments, between the quiet inflation of volcanic systems and their eventual exhalation, between dormancy and awakening, in that liminal space where pressure becomes motion, where the held becomes the expressed. Just as your breath follows its own rhythm, filling, holding, releasing, pausing, so too do volcanic systems move through predictable phases that repeat like seasons, each cycle teaching us about timing and patience, about the way nature manages its internal forces through patterns that span decades or centuries yet remain fundamentally consistent. Allow your awareness to expand now, taking in not just individual moments, but the sweep of these cycles, the way single eruptions fit into broader sequences that reveal the Earth's deeper rhythms, its fiery psychology operating across timescales that humble our brief human spans. At the heart of volcanic cycles lies the fundamental pattern of inflation and deflation, a breathing motion where magma chambers beneath the surface swell as molten rock accumulates, and subside as eruptions release pressure, only to begin filling again in preparation for the next event. Modern monitoring instruments measure this cycle with exquisite precision, tracking ground deformation through satellite sensors that detect swelling of just centimeters over months or years, revealing how volcanic systems prepare themselves long before any surface activity becomes visible. Axial Seamount, an underwater volcano off Oregon's coast, demonstrates this rhythm beautifully. Scientists have watched it inflate predictably between eruptions in 1998, 2011, and 2015, each time swelling until reaching a critical threshold that signals another release is imminent. The seamount's surface rises as magma accumulates in a chamber 3 kilometers below the seafloor, the overlying rock bending upward, like a balloon expanding, and when that swelling reaches about 2 meters above the post-eruption baseline, conditions become ripe for the next eruption. Think of this as the earth taking a deep breath before speaking, that moment of gathering before expression, and you have felt it in smaller ways. The build-up of words before an important conversation, thoughts coalescing before a decision, emotions rising before they find release. Throughout 2024, Axial's inflation rate accelerated dramatically, going from virtually zero in late 2023 to 15 centimeters per year by mid-year, accompanied by hundreds of daily earthquakes that signal magma moving through the crust, adjusting pathways, fracturing rock. This pattern suggests the volcano reached full inflation by late 2024, prompting forecasts that an eruption will likely occur within a year, offering researchers a rare opportunity to test predictions and observe how these cycles unfold in real time. The ability to forecast based on inflation patterns represents a triumph of persistent monitoring, showing how understanding cycles transforms unpredictable events into anticipated phases of natural rhythm. Seismic activity forms another crucial thread in volcanic cycles, those tremors and quakes that accompany magma movement, revealing what is happening deep below in language we are learning to interpret with increasing sophistication. When volcanoes awaken from dormancy, seismicity typically increases weeks to months before surface eruptions, beginning with deep earthquakes as magma fractures its way upward through brittle rock, then transitioning to shallower swarms as the molten material approaches the surface. Iceland's Sundfnirka eruptions, which began in late 2023 and continued through 2024 and 2025 in a remarkable series of 9 separate events, illustrate these patterns vividly. Each eruption was preceded by intense earthquake swarms, with thousands of tremors clustering over hours or days. Seismicity plotting the path of magma intrusions moving laterally through the crust before breaking through to the surface. The November 2023 earthquake swarm recorded about 20,000 tremors, mapping a dike intrusion stretching kilometers beneath the Reykjanes Peninsula, giving authorities time to evacuate the town of Grindavik before lava flows threatened infrastructure. Breathe into this understanding now, feeling how the earth communicates its intentions through tremors we can measure, through signals that travel through rock at speeds we can track, creating windows of opportunity for those who listen carefully. These seismic precursors vary in character as eruptions approach. Scientists distinguish between volcanotectonic earthquakes caused by brittle fracturing, low-frequency earthquakes associated with fluid movement, and harmonic tremor that indicates magma or gases flowing through conduits in a sustained way. Machine learning applied to seismic data from dozens of volcanoes over decades has revealed that certain patterns appear consistently before eruptions across different volcanic systems worldwide, patterns involving increasing numbers of mixed-frequency earthquakes in the hours leading up to surface activity, subtle changes in seismic wave velocities as stress accumulates in surrounding rock, and accelerations in earthquake rates that follow mathematical progressions, allowing forecasts of eruption timing. Kilauea volcano in Hawaii entered a new eruptive phase in late 2024, beginning an episodic cycle quite different from its previous behavior, periods of spectacular lavafantaining, lasting hours to days, alternating with pauses during which the magma chamber recharges. Each fantaining episode is preceded by measurable ground inflation as pressure builds, detected through tiltmeters, sends changes in sloped subtle for humans to perceive, and scientists have learned to calculate probability windows for when the next episode will begin based on minimum inflation necessary to trigger fountaining, and a rate at which pressure accumulates. Episode after episode follows this rhythm: inflation during pauses, deflation during fountain, the volcano breathing in a cycle that allows not only understanding of current behavior, but forecasting of future activity within windows of hours or days. Let your mind drift now with these cycles, imagining the slow accumulation during pauses, magma ascending from depth, filling chambers, pressure mounting gradually like water behind a dam, then the sudden release as fountains burst skyward, lava flows spreading across crater floors, the system deflating as it expends accumulated energy. You have experienced analogous cycles in your own life, perhaps the buildup of stress during busy periods followed by necessary releases through rest or recreation. The way periodic decompression maintains overall balance, rather than letting pressures mount to breaking points. This rhythmic alternation between charging and discharging appears across volcanic systems worldwide, from the brief cycles at Kilauea measured in days to longer periodicities at less active volcanoes spanning years or decades, each one demonstrating how Earth manages internal forces through patterns that repeat rather than random catastrophes. Pause here for a deeper immersion into these rhythmic cycles, allowing the pattern of inflation and deflation to become almost physical in your awareness. Direct your attention to your own breath, noticing how it follows cycles, the in-breath that fills, the natural pause, the out-breath that releases, the moment of emptiness before the cycle begins again. Feel how this mirrors volcanic rhythms. Now expand that awareness to imagine the Earth breathing on geological timescales, each breath lasting months or years rather than seconds. Maintain this dual awareness of your own cycles and volcanic cycles for 70 slow breaths, counting each cycle as one complete inflation and deflation. Notice how attending to rhythm itself becomes meditative, how patterns soothe even when they involve tremendous forces. Let your body settle more deeply with each counted breath, releasing any held tension into the support beneath you. And when the count completes, remain in that rhythmic awareness for a few moments longer, feeling the natural flow of cycles within cycles, from heartbeats to breaths to volcanic phases to planetary orbits, all nested in time's patient unfolding. Returning now to our exploration, we find that volcanic cycles also involve chemical changes that influence behavior in ways researchers are only beginning to fully understand. Magma composition can shift during eruptions, with the initial material expelled often differing from what emerges later, revealing how chambers contain layered or mixed magmas that evacuate in sequence. The 2021-2022 eruption at Cumbria volcano in the Canary Islands saw scientists collect daily ash samples throughout the 3-month event, analyzing the glass fragments to track changes in the liquid magma's composition. Discovered silica content started high in the first week, gradually decreased until suddenly reversing to weeks before the eruption ended. likely marking when the mantle magma supply cut off. This chemical variation correlated remarkably with the strength of volcanic tremor recorded by seismometers, with higher silica content corresponding to stronger trembling as the more viscous magma moved through conduits with greater friction and resistance. Think of how your voice changes when speaking with different emotions, smooth when calm, strained when tense. Similarly, volcanic systems generate different seismic signatures depending on what they are moving through their plumbing. This discovery suggests that by monitoring tremor amplitude during ongoing eruptions, scientists might infer interior magma properties without direct sampling, potentially forecasting how eruptions will evolve based on real-time seismic data. The finding highlights how volcanic processes operate through feedback loops where chemical state influences physical behavior, which produces signals we can measure, which inform predictions about future chemical and physical changes, cycles within cycles, each one offering clues to the others. Environmental factors also weave into these rhythms in ways that surprise researchers, connecting volcanic cycles to phenomena as seemingly unrelated as climate and ocean patterns. Melting glaciers appear to influence volcanic activity by removing weight that has pressed down on magma chambers for millennia, potentially triggering eruptions of previously stable systems as a sudden reduction in overburden pressure allows magma to rise more easily. Iceland's increased volcanic activity in recent decades may reflect this process, as ice caps thin and retreat due to warming temperatures, though teasing apart this influence from natural variations in magma supply remains challenging. Conversely, large explosive eruptions inject sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere, where it forms aerosol particles that reflect sunlight, temporarily cooling the planet's surface. Studies suggest major eruptions can even influence El Niño cycles by altering atmospheric circulation patterns, strengthening certain oscillations that make El Niño oscillate more likely in the years following volcanic events. These connections remind us that Earth systems intertwine in complex ways, volcanic cycles both responding to and influencing the broader climate cycles that govern weather patterns worldwide. Let your awareness expand to encompass these interconnections, seeing volcanic processes not in isolation, but as threads in a vast tapestry, where everything influences everything else, where local events have global consequences, where the Earth operates as an integrated whole rather than separate systems. The frequency of volcanic activity itself follows patterns when viewed at the right scale. 63 confirmed eruptions from 58 volcanoes during 2025 represents neither an unusual surge nor a concerning decline, but falls within the range expected based on decades of monitoring. What is changed is not the number of eruptions, but our ability to detect and document them with satellite networks, seismic arrays, and social media combining to ensure that even remote events in the Pacific Ring of Fire or on distant ocean ridges get recorded and analyzed. The perception of increased activity often reflects heightened awareness rather than actual changes, though certain regions like Iceland's Reykjanes Peninsula have indeed entered more active phases of cycles that operate over centuries, alternating between long dormancies and decades-long eruption sequences. Breathe into this temporal perspective now, feeling how individual human lifespans capture only brief windows of these longer cycles. How what seems unprecedented to us fits into rhythms the Earth has followed for eons. Volcanic monitoring agencies worldwide track about 20,000 earthquakes annually, with no evidence that seismic frequency has fundamentally changed. Yet spectacular, photogenic eruptions dominate social media feeds, creating impressions of surging activity that do not match the statistical reality. Understanding these cycles helps separate signal from noise, allowing us to recognize genuine pattern shifts, like Iceland's reawakening or axial seamounts' predictable inflation, from normal background variation that only seems unusual because we are paying closer attention. This distinction matters for managing risk appropriately, neither panicking at normal fluctuations nor ignoring genuine precursors because they seem like part of baseline noise. The processes that drive these cycles operate across multiple timescales simultaneously, creating nested rhythms that interact in complex ways. On the shortest scale, individual eruptions progress through phases lasting hours to weeks. Initial explosions or lava fountaining, sustained diffusion as magma flows to the surface, declining activity as chambers drain and pressure drops, eventual cessation followed by pauses during recharge. These immediate cycles nest within longer periodicities where volcanoes alternate between active and dormant periods spanning decades or centuries, driven by variations in magma supply from depth, or changes in crustal stress that modulate when and how accumulated magma can reach the surface. Kilauea's historical record shows alternations between summit eruptions and rift zone eruptions on timescales of years to decades, each mode lasting until conditions shift and the volcano reorganizes its plumbing, redirecting magma flows to different outlets in patterns that reflect the interplay of magma supply, structural evolution, and regional stress fields. At even longer scales, entire volcanic systems wax and wane over millions of years as tectonic plates drift over hotspots, or as subduction zones evolve, with chains of volcanoes forming and then eroding away in cycles spanning geological epochs. These vast rhythms exceed human comprehension in their scope, yet they contextualize the immediate cycles we observe, reminding us that present activity represents just one moment in processes that began long before our species existed and will continue long after. You have sensed this nestedness perhaps in your own life rhythms. Daily patterns of waking and sleeping nested within weekly work cycles, nested within seasonal changes, nested within life stages that unfold over decades. Immediate and the timeless, both the urgent and the patient. Now let your entire awareness settle on the concept of cyclic return, that fundamental pattern where endings prepare beginnings, and beginnings contain endings, where the Earth's processes loop back on themselves in eternal recursion. Direct your gentle focus to an imagined volcanic cycle: inflation, eruption, deflation, recharge, seeing how each phase necessarily follows from the previous and leads to the next, how there is no true start or end but only continuous transformation. Maintain this cyclical visualization through 90 complete breaths, counting each full cycle of your own breathing as one revolution of the volcanic wheel. Notice how attending to cycles induces a sense of timelessness, how repetition becomes meditation, how rhythm creates safety through predictability, even when the forces involved are immense. Feel your body's complete relaxation now, all daily tensions dissolved into this rhythmic flow, your mind clear and spacious as it contemplates the earth's patient patterns, and as you complete the count, let the image of cycles fade while retaining the felt sense of rhythm, that peaceful knowing that all processes move through phases, that nothing remains static, that change itself follows changeless laws of pattern and return. From these key cycles and processes, we now understand how volcanic events emerge not as random catastrophes but as predictable phases in systems that follow rules, that communicate their intentions through signals we are learning to read, and manage enormous forces through rhythmic releases rather than sudden overwhelming disasters. The Earth's fiery psychology reveals itself as fundamentally cyclic, with inflation-deflation breathing, seismic precursors building to climax, chemical variations that correlate with physical behavior, environmental influences that modulate activity levels, all woven into patterns that repeat at scales from hours to millions of years. Understanding these processes transforms fear into appreciation, seeing volcanic activity not as nature's violence but as its necessary self-regulation, the way it prevents catastrophic pressure accumulations through frequent small releases, maintains balance through constant adjustment, demonstrates patience through cycles that honor geological time even as they respond to immediate conditions. You have built deeper understanding through this exploration, accumulating knowledge the way magma chambers accumulate molten rock, slowly, steadily, each addition integrating with what came before, until a threshold of comprehension allows new insights to emerge. As your body rests in profound relaxation now, having absorbed these rhythms and cycles, having felt them resonate with your own patterns of tension and release, allow yourself to drift naturally toward the next phase of our journey, where these cyclical processes manifest in spectacular movements and flows that reshape landscapes and demonstrate the Earth's creative power in action. The transition from understanding cycles to witnessing their expression comes naturally, as night follows day, as exhalation follows breath, as action emerges from accumulated potential in the timeless dance between rest and manifestation. Let your awareness now settle on that moment of transition, when inflation reaches critical levels and eruption begins. Then a patient accumulation suddenly becomes kinetic release. Hold this anticipatory focus through 100 soft breaths, feeling the gathering energy not as anxiety but as potential seeking expression, like spring gathering itself before flowers burst from buds. Allow each breath to carry you deeper into peaceful readiness for what comes next, the dynamic flows and interactions that will fill our next exploration. And when the count completes, rest in perfect stillness, suspended between phases, cradled in the earth's eternal rhythms, as we prepare to follow the movements that spread outward from these cyclic releases, the lava flows and pyroclastic surges that carry volcanic energy across landscapes in the next chapter of our tranquil journey through volcanic wonders. From this rhythmic serenity, allow the awareness to drift outward now, into the dynamic flows that emerge from these cycles, the interactions and movements that spread across the landscape, like a gentle current weaving through a tranquil riverbed. Picture the lava beginning its journey beyond the vent, cascading in luminous streams that interact with the air, the earth, and the living world around it, transforming everything in a dance of creation and renewal. Just as our emotions can flow outward, influencing our surroundings and fostering connections, so to do these volcanic movements reveal the interconnected beauty of the planet's fiery expressions, inviting us to release any held tensions and embrace the harmony of change. Let your body sink deeper into relaxation, your thoughts softening like warm wax, as we explore these graceful interactions with wonder and ease. In the realm of dynamic flows, lava takes center stage, its movement a mesmerizing progression from molten emergence to solidified legacy, shaped by gravity, viscosity, and the terrain it encounters. Basaltic lava, born of low silica composition and flowing from Hawaiian-style eruptions, moves with the fluid grace of honey warmed by summer sun, spreading in thin sheets that can travel kilometers from their source before cooling and hardening into stone. The speed at which lava flows depends on multiple factors working in concert: eruption rate at the vent, the temperature of the molten rock, the steepness of slopes it descends, the amount of dissolved gases it contains. When these factors align toward fluidity, lava pours forth like a river of light, glowing orange and red with temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, its surface cooling rapidly upon contact with air while the interior remains molten and mobile, insulated by the very crust it forms. Think of this as the Earth's creative gesture, painting landscapes in real time with brushstrokes of liquid stone. And you have witnessed analogous processes perhaps in your own creative moments when inspiration flows freely, ideas pouring forth faster than you can capture them, transforming blank canvases into expressions of inner vision. The texture that forms on cooling lava varies dramatically, creating two distinct types recognized worldwide by their Hawaiian names, Hafaho and Dayet, each one revealing different flow dynamics through its surface characteristics. Hahoho lava flows develop smooth, billowy surfaces with distinctive ropey textures that resemble chocolate brownies pulled from the oven while still soft, their patterns frozen mid-swirl. This smooth flow forms when lava moves slowly on gentle slopes under steady discharge rates, allowing a flexible skin to develop that wrinkles and folds as the molten interior continues pushing forward beneath it, creating those characteristic rope-like undulations that can extend 4 meters. The word pahoho means smooth, unbroken surface in Hawaiian. perfectly capturing how this lava type flows with minimal disturbance to its crust, healing any tears that form as the skin remains pliable enough to accommodate internal movement without breaking apart completely. Walking across cold Pahoe barefoot would be inadvisable, but theoretically possible given its relatively smooth surface, though attempting the same on a lava would be unthinkable. A lava presents a stark contrast, characterized by rough, jagged, clinkery surfaces made of sharp angular blocks called clinkers that form a rubble-like coating over the actual flow beneath. This forbidding texture develops when lava moves faster or encounters steeper slopes, causing the brittle crust to fragment repeatedly as differential flow rates tear it apart. Bits of cooled surface tumble through the moving lava, becoming coated and recoated with molten material, creating those sharp, spinose fragments that give it its name, which imitates the sound a person might make while walking barefoot across its punishing surface. Breathe into this diversity of texture now, feeling how single changes in flow dynamics, a slight increase in speed, a steeper gradient, can transform smooth flows into rough ones, mirroring how small shifts in our own circumstances can dramatically alter experiences, how patience yields smoothness while haze creates friction. The transition from Pahoho to air is irreversible once it occurs. Smooth flows can become rough when conditions change, but rough flows can never revert to smoothness, the broken crust maintaining its fragmented character regardless of what happens afterward. This one-way transformation tells us something profound about how processes lock in certain characteristics, how some changes in systems become permanent features rather than temporary states, inviting reflection on which of our own patterns serve us and which we might wish to influence before they harden into habit. Recent research into what triggers this textural transition reveals fascinating insights about flow mechanics operating beneath the surface. Scientists have discovered that internal mixing creates shear instabilities where faster-moving layers drag against slower ones, generating turbulence that disrupts the surface crust and initiates the transformation from smooth to rough. Experiments heating pulverized pahoho in furnaces until it melts, then stirring the molten material as it cools, demonstrate how mixing accelerates cooling and triggers the light textures within minutes, suggesting that chaotic churning within natural flows drives the abrupt textural changes observed worldwide. This discovery helps explain why transitions happen under varied conditions, steepening slopes, increasing discharge rates, changes in viscosity, can create the internal mixing that disrupts smooth flow into fragmented roughness. Let your imagination now cascade with the lava, envisioning its glowing surface crackling like veins of light in the dusk, the faint crackle of cooling crust mingling with the distant hush of the wind carrying volcanic gases skyward. Sensory details abound in these movements, radiant heat warming the air meters away, making distant objects shimmer in rising thermals, the subtle steam hissing where flows meet moisture, creating ephemeral veils that dance upward. Iceland's recent eruptions on the Reykjanes Peninsula, which began in March 2021, and continued through multiple episodes into 2025, have produced spectacular pejojo that spread through valleys, building layers averaging over 30 meters thick in some depressions, their surfaces preserving intricate ropey patterns that document flow directions and speeds frozen in stone. The volume of lava from these eruptions exceeded 150 million cubic meters across nearly 5 square kilometers, demonstrating how patient accumulation through repeated episodes builds substantial new land from countless thin layers stacked over months and years. As lava interacts with the terrain, its path becomes a dialogue with the landscape, channeling through valleys or pooling in depressions, influenced by slope angles and obstacles that redirect its advance. Flows follow gravity's inexorable pull, seeking lowest paths, yet their own heat and momentum allow them to override some topographic barriers, pushing uphill for short distances through sheer kinetic energy, or climbing over obstacles when constrained channels force them upward for spilling over. Recent eruptions near Grindavik in Iceland saw creative defensive measures where firefighters sprayed water on advancing lava fronts to slow their progress, while heavy equipment rapidly built berms of earth and cooled lava tidal flows away from critical infrastructure, demonstrating how understanding flow dynamics enables intervention strategies that work with lava's tendencies rather than futilely opposing them. Think of how your own energy flows adapt to life's contours, navigating obstacles with resilience, finding paths of least resistance yet occasionally pushing through barriers when necessary, and lava teaches these same lessons through its patient, yet persistent advance across landscapes it gradually transforms. The interaction between flowing lava and water creates particularly dramatic moments. When molten rock enters oceans or encounters streams, explosive encounters generate clouds of steam and shatter lava into glassy fragments, building new coastlines through violent creativity. Hawaii's ongoing eruptions have added hundreds of acres of new land to the Big Island through lava entering the ocean, each encounter between fire and water a testament to transformation through meeting of opposites, elements that seem incompatible yet collaborate in building Earth's surface. Pause here, gently directing your attention to the imagined path of lava flow, noticing how it interacts with the ground, bending and adapting with graceful persistence, sometimes smooth, sometimes rough, always transforming. Feel any corresponding sense of flow in your breath, tensions easing like molten rock cooling into form, finding its permanent shape after flowing freely. Hold this focus for 120 soft breaths, allowing the mind to drift with the movement, surrendering to the serene progression, feeling how flow states require no forcing, just allowing natural forces to guide direction. And when the count completes, return softened to this exploration of volcanic movements, spreading across landscapes in endless variety. Returning to this soothing narrative, return to pyroclastic flows, those swift, turbulent currents of hot ash, gas, and rock fragments that race across the landscape in ground-hugging avalanches of incandescent material, where lava flows move with liquid grace, Pyroclastic flows surge with explosive urgency, reaching speeds that can exceed 100 kilometers per hour, sometimes approaching 700 kilometers per hour in the most energetic examples. Their temperatures ranging from 100 to over 1000 degrees Celsius, hot enough to instantly combust organic material, melt plastics, and cause fatal burns from thermal radiation alone without direct contact. These flows form through several mechanisms, each one involving the fragmentation and mixing of volcanic material with gases that create fluidized currents behaving like dense, hot avalanches that conform to topography yet move with frightening speed. Imagine these surges as the Earth's most urgent expressions, where pressure releases not in gentle effusion but explosive fragmentation, magma literally exploding into countless particles suspended in expanding gases that propel a mixture downslope, like a pyroclastic freight train that stops for nothing. Column collapse creates many pyroclastic flows. When eruption columns rising skyward become too dense or cool to maintain upward momentum, falling back to Earth in catastrophic cascades that spread radially from the vent or channel down valleys in focused surges. The famous eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE that buried Pompeii and Herculaneum resulted from such collapses. Pyroclastic surges racing through the cities at temperatures around 300 degrees Celsius, killing residents instantly through extreme heat that caused bodies to spasm into contorted postures, preserved as voids in the ash that entombed them. You have felt sudden releases in smaller ways, perhaps, those moments when long-suppressed emotions burst forth in tears or laughter, overwhelming in their intensity yet ultimately cleansing, and pyroclastic flows embody this principle at geological scale, tremendous forces seeking rapid release, through channels that cannot contain them gracefully, breaking free in surges that transform everything they touch. Lava dome collapse generates another type of pyroclastic flow, when viscous lava piling up over vents becomes gravitationally unstable. The steep fronts or entire structures suddenly failing and disintegrating into fragmentary avalanches that accelerate down volcanic flanks. Mount St. Helens 1980 lateral blast exemplified this mechanism when an earthquake triggered catastrophic failure of a bulging lava dome, releasing pressures that had built for months in an explosion that flattened forests pentakilometers distant, demonstrating how accumulated stresses seek violent equilibration when containment fails. The structure of pyroclastic flows reveals their complex nature. Dense basal portion hugging the ground contains larger rock fragments traveling in churning suspension, while above it rises a turbulent ash cloud formed as the flow's heat and turbulence loft finer particles skyward, creating billowing clouds that tower over the ground hugging main flow. This two-part architecture means pyroclastic flows spread destruction through multiple mechanisms simultaneously. The basal flow bulldozes and buries everything in its direct path, with flowing rubble that can accumulate meters to hundreds of meters deep, while the overriding ash cloud sears at, suffocates anything it engulfs, traveling slightly faster and reaching farther than the dense flow beneath it. Breathe into this intensity now, recognizing how even the Earth's most violent expressions follow physical principles, how extremes emerge from the same fundamental forces that create gentle lava flows, just accelerated and amplified. Mount Pinatubo's 1991 eruption in the Philippines generated pyroclastic flows that filled river valleys with deposits to 100 meters deep, more than the height of a 60-story building, burying entire landscapes under fragmented volcanic material. Yet these same deposits, over decades and centuries, weather into fertile soils that support lush vegetation, demonstrating how destruction becomes foundation for renewal, how even the most intense releases eventually integrate into larger cycles of transformation and growth. Pyroclastic flows interact with the atmosphere in dramatic ways, injecting tremendous volumes of ash and gases into the air column, creating plumes that rise tens of kilometers into the stratosphere, where winds disperse them across continents. Water vapor dominates volcanic gas emissions, followed by carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide, along with smaller amounts of hydrogen sulfide, hydrogen chloride, hydrogen fluoride, and other compounds. As magma rises and pressure decreases, dissolved gases exsolve into bubbles that expand dramatically. A cubic meter of gas-rich rhyolite magma suddenly depressurized from depth to surface expands into 670 cubic meters of steam and fragmented material at atmospheric pressure. 670-fold volume increase that powers explosive eruptions and propels pyroclastic flows with their characteristic violence. Think of volcanic gases as the invisible architects of eruption style, their abundance and composition determining whether magma erupts peacefully or explosively, whether flows move gently or race down slopes as incandescent avalanches. Sulfur dioxide released in massive eruptions converts to sulfate aerosols in the stratosphere, forming veils that reflect sunlight and temporarily cool Earth's surface. Large eruptions can inject enough sulfur to lower global temperatures by several degrees 4 years afterward, influencing weather patterns worldwide. The 1815 eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia released so much sulfur that the following year became known as the year without summer across the northern hemisphere, with crop failures and climatic disruptions, demonstrating how volcanic gases link local events to planetary systems through atmospheric chemistry. Let your awareness expand now to encompass these atmospheric interactions, seeing how volcanic processes reach beyond immediate landscapes to touch distant regions through gases that spread on global winds. Carbon dioxide, heavier than air, can pool in low-lying areas near vents, creating invisible hazards where oxygen becomes diluted to dangerous levels, while lighter gases like sulfur dioxide form visible plumes that drift downwind, creating volcanic smog that affects air quality hundreds of kilometers from sources. The amount of gas a volcano emits varies tremendously. Less than 20 tons per day during quiet phases to over 10 million tons daily during major eruptions, with Kilaue's recent episodic fountaining generating 50,000 tons of sulfur dioxide per day during active phases, creating strands of volcanic glass called pillars here that accumulate on surfaces across Hawaii's summit region. Pause here for an extended immersion into these flowing interactions, allowing your awareness to follow the movements outward from vents to distant effects. Direct your gentle focus to an imagined lava flow, a pyroclastic surge occurring simultaneously on different flanks of the same volcano, seeing how one moves with liquid persistence while the other surges with explosive energy, how both reshape landscapes yet through completely different mechanisms. Notice your own breath moving with ease now. No resistance, just natural circulation like gases rising from volcanic vents. Maintain this dual visualization through 150 slow breaths, counting each cycle as one complete flow surge pairing. Full how observing movement without judgment creates its own meditation. How processes unfold according to their nature, when we simply witness rather than trying to control. And as the count completes, let the images fade while retaining the peaceful sense of flow that comes from accepting rather than resisting the dynamic movements that characterize both volcanic systems and our own inner landscapes. From these dynamic flows and atmospheric interactions, we sense how volcanic movements spread outward in cascading effects that ripple through ecosystems and climate systems, demonstrating the interconnectedness that defines Earth's processes. Lava flows enrich soils with minerals, creating fertile ground for new vegetation, despite initially destroying everything in their paths. Ash deposits weather into nutrient-rich layers that support agriculture. The finest volcanic soils producing abundant crops precisely because their parent materials contain diverse elements essential for plant growth. Hawaii's volcanic landscapes support unique ecosystems adapted to frequent lava flows, with pioneer species like ferns colonizing fresh air within years, beginning succession sequences that eventually build forests on what was recently barren rock. You have sensed this principle of creative destruction perhaps in your own transformations, how releasing old patterns, though initially disruptive, makes space for new growth more aligned with your evolving self, how endings and beginnings intertwine in spirals rather than straight lines. Pyroclastic flows, despite their destructive power, leave behind deposits that eventually become important geological resources. Tuff they form provides building stone. Their thermal properties influence groundwater systems. Their chemistry reveals eruption histories that help forecast future activity. Even the most intense volcanic flows integrate into larger systems over time, their immediate impacts giving way to long-term contributions to landscape evolution, soil formation, ecological succession. The interactions between volcanic flows and human communities create complex negotiations between hazard and opportunity, with millions living on volcanic slopes precisely because the soils are so productive, the geothermal resources so abundant, the landscapes so spectacular. Understanding flow dynamics, how lava moves, how pyroclastic surges behave, how gases disperse, enables better hazard mitigation through evacuation planning, infrastructure setting, monitoring systems that provide early warnings. Iceland's recent experience managing repeated eruptions near Grindavkeg exemplifies this adaptive approach, with authorities using flow models to predict lava paths, constructing barriers to redirect flows, evacuating when necessary, but allowing returns during pauses, working with volcanic activity, rather than pretending it does not exist or can be completely controlled. Breathe deeply into this acceptance of dynamic processes, recognizing how the Earth manages enormous forces through movements that, while sometimes violent, follow comprehensible patterns that allow anticipation and response. Volcanic flows teach us about working with natural forces, handling lava rather than trying to stop it, preparing for pyroclastic surges rather than assuming they will not occur, respecting gases that disperse predictably downwind. These lessons apply beyond volcanology to how we approach any powerful process in our lives, finding ways to guide rather than oppose, to prepare rather than deny, to flow with rather than rigidly resist the movements that will occur whether we acknowledge them or not. As your body rests in profound relaxation now, having followed these dynamic flows from smooth pahoe to rougher, from gentle lava streams to explosive pyroclastic surges, from local effects to atmospheric interactions spanning continents, allow yourself to drift naturally toward the next phase of our journey. The flows we have explored demonstrate how volcanic systems express their internal states through external movements, how compositions and cycles determine the character of what emerges, how interactions with surroundings create cascading effects that ripple outward through interconnected systems. Understanding these dynamic movements prepares us to appreciate the extremes that occasionally arise, those intense variations that represent the upper bounds of volcanic expression, yet still follow the same fundamental principles, just amplified to spectacular degrees. Now, let your entire awareness settle on the concept of flow itself, that fundamental pattern where movement responds to forces and gradients, where fluids find their levels, where energy spreads from concentrated sources into surrounding systems. Direct your attention to this principle, operating at all scales from magma chambers to atmospheric circulation to your own bloodstream, carrying oxygen to tissues. Maintain this expanded awareness through 180 soft breaths, feeling how everything flows when conditions permit. Resistance creates pressure while yielding allows movement. Notice how your muscles have perhaps released completely now, your body flowing into the support beneath it like lava for conforming to terrain. And when the count completes, rest in perfect stillness for a few moments, suspended in that quiet space between active flow and solid stillness, preparing for the intensities that will crown our exploration in the next chapter of this tranquil journey through volcanic wonders. As these dynamic flows weave through the landscape in their graceful yet powerful dance, invite a deeper breath now, allowing your awareness to rise gently toward the vivid intensities that sometimes crown the Earth's fiery expressions, the extremes and impacts that reveal the planet's most profound variations. Picture the quiet build-up, escalating into a magnificent release, not as chaos, but as a necessary crescendo in the symphony of transformation, where pressures peak and then subside, leaving behind lessons in resilience and renewal. Just as our own inner worlds can reach moments of intense emotion, surging forth to clear the way for clarity and growth, so to do volcanic extremes mirror this process, offering us a pathway to deeper understanding and calm amid life's inevitable upheavals. Let your eyelids flutter with heaviness, your limbs relax into the support beneath you, as we delve into these nuanced intensities with serene wonder. In the spectrum of volcanic variations, extremes manifest through eruptions of extraordinary scale, where the volcanic explosivity index serves as humanity's attempt to quantify the unquantifiable, measuring the magnitude of volcanic events on a scale from 0 to 8. This logarithmic system, developed in the early 1980s, assigns values based on erupted volume, plume height, and descriptive observations ranging from gentle to mega-colossal, with each step representing roughly a tenfold increase in explosive power beyond the scale's lower ranges. Vyazivrut describes non-explosive effusive activity where lava simply flows from vents, perhaps forming lakes of molten rock like those that shimmer at Kilauea's summit, while a VI-8 represents supervolcanic eruptions capable of ejecting over 240 cubic miles of material, sending ash columns 20 kilometers or more into the stratosphere, events so massive they reshape regional geography and influence global climate 4 years afterward. Think of this scale as a language for describing the indescribable, a way to compare Mount St. Helens 1980 eruption, which ejected about 1 cubic kilometer of material, and VEI5, with Mount Pinatubo's 1991 event that released 10 cubic kilometers for VI6, or the catastrophic 1815 eruption of Tambora that expelled over 100 cubic kilometers and achieved VI7. Largest eruption in recorded human history, whose ash clouds darkened skies across the northern hemisphere and cooled temperatures so dramatically that 1816 became known as the year without a summer, with crop failures and food shortages affecting millions. You have experienced scaled comparisons in your own life, perhaps, knowing that some challenges rate as minor annoyances while others transform everything. And the VI provides similar context for volcanic events, helping us understand which eruptions merely disrupt local areas versus those that influence entire hemispheres or a full planet. The scale accommodates tremendous variety within each level, recognizing that eruption duration, gas content, and other factors modulate impact beyond simple volume measurements. Paracutin volcano in Mexico, which famously erupted from a farmer's cornfield in 1943, expelled about 1.3 cubic kilometers of material over 9 years of continuous activity, enough volume to suggest VF5, yet the prolonged, non-violent character of its eruptions earned it VF4. Instead, demonstrating how intensity matters alongside magnitude, historical records show frequency inversely correlating with scale. Thousands of VEI2 eruptions have occurred in the past 10,000 years, hundreds at VI 3 and 4, dozens at VI 5 and 6, while only a handful reached VI 7, and no VI 8 events have been witnessed by modern humans, though geological evidence confirms about 40 such supervolcanic eruptions occurred over the past 132 million years, with the most recent being Lake Taipo's Oriole new eruption more than 27,000 years ago. Breathe into this temporal perspective now, feeling how the largest extremes operate on timescales exceeding civilizational memory, how our species has never witnessed the planet's full range of volcanic expression, only the moderate variations that punctuate calmer periods between the truly transformative events. Supervolcanoes represent the upper bound of this spectrum, vast caldera systems where magma chambers spanning hundreds of cubic kilometers lurk beneath the surface, capable of eruptions that would darken skies worldwide and plunge temperatures enough to threaten agriculture across continents. Yellowstone Volcano in Wyoming exemplifies this category, with 3 massive eruptions in its history, the most recent about 600,000 years ago ejecting roughly 1,000 cubic kilometers of material as VI, creating a caldera measuring tens of kilometers across that now hosts geysers, hot springs, and other geothermal features as evidence of the still active magma system below. Let your imagination descend into these vast magma reservoirs, chambers filled with partially molten rock, containing dissolved gases under tremendous pressure, the overlying crust acting as a lid that, should it fail catastrophically, would release forces exceeding the total explosive yield of humanity's nuclear arsenals by orders of magnitude. Advanced monitoring at Yellowstone, using seismic imaging, has revealed distributed magma accumulations throughout the crust, with higher silica rhyolitic melt at shallower depths, and deeper basaltic sources feeding the system, though scientists emphasize that no signs of imminent eruption exist. The annual probability of such an event remains extremely low, perhaps 1 in 700,000. The very fact we can forecast such things demonstrates how understanding reduces fear, how knowledge transforms unknowable threats into quantifiable risks we can monitor and prepare for, much as understanding our own emotional patterns allows us to recognize building pressures before they reach crisis points. Imagine the sensory intensity of a VI 7 or 8 event, ground trembling like a living thing, earthquake swarms building over weeks or months as magma forces its way upward, and the catastrophic release as the chamber roof collapses inward while ash erupts skyward in columns that punch through the tropopause into the stratosphere, spreading umbrella-shaped clouds hundreds of kilometers wide. Pyroclastic flows would race outward from the vent in all directions, traveling at speeds approaching 700 kilometers per h with temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius, obliterating everything within tens of kilometers through thermal radiation, kinetic impact, and burial, under meters to hundreds of meters of pumice and ash. The ash cloud spreading from such eruptions would disrupt air travel across entire hemispheres. Fine particles abrading jet engines and obscuring visibility, while falling ash will blanket landscapes hundreds to thousands of kilometers downwind, collapsing roofs under accumulations measured in meters rather than centimeters. Pause here for a moment of integration, allowing these extreme scales to settle into perspective without inducing anxiety, recognizing them as part of Earth's natural range rather than aberrations to fear. Direct your attention to your own breath, noticing how it continues regardless of what your mind contemplates, how your body maintains itself through cycles independent of conscious worry. Hold this grounding awareness through 170 soft breaths, counting each one as an anchor to the present moment, feeling how even contemplating extremes need not disturb inner peace. When approached with equanimity, notice how your muscles have perhaps released completely now. Your jaw soft, shoulders dropped, face smooth, and when the count completes, return gently to our exploration of these intensities, holding them lightly rather than gripping them with fear, allowing wonder to coexist with respect for natural forces beyond human control. Atmospheric interactions from extreme eruptions create global impacts that dwarf local devastation, with sulfur dioxide converting to sulfate aerosols that spread through stratospheric circulation, forming reflective veils that intercept sunlight before it reaches Earth's surface. The 1815 Tambora eruption injected massive amounts of sulfur that created brilliant sunsets worldwide, but dropped temperatures enough to cause the infamous year without a summer in 1816, with frosts occurring in June across New England, crop failures throughout Europe and Asia, and widespread food shortages that contributed to social unrest and migration. Modern climate modeling suggests a VA7 eruption today would similarly cool global temperature by 1 to 3 degrees Celsius for several years, with differential regional effects where some areas experience drought, while others face excessive precipitation, agricultural zones shifting poleward temporarily, and growing seasons shortening enough to threaten food security in vulnerable regions. Think of volcanic aerosols as the Earth's temporary sunscreen, blocking a percentage of incoming solar radiation and normally warms the surface. And while this cooling might sound appealing in an era of anthropogenic warming, the rapid change and uneven distribution would disrupt established agricultural patterns far more than the gradual warming we currently experience, demonstrating how even beneficial extreme events create challenges through their intensity and suddenness. Beyond temperature effects, stratospheric aerosols influence atmospheric chemistry in complex ways, with sulfates providing surfaces for ozone-depleting reactions that temporarily thin the protective layer shielding Earth from ultraviolet radiation, while ash particles affect precipitation patterns by modifying cloud formation processes. The 2022 Hunga Tonga eruption, though only VI5, demonstrated these atmospheric linkages by injecting unprecedented amounts of water vapor into the stratosphere from its undersea vent, creating both cooling through sulfate aerosols and warming through water vapor's greenhouse effects. The dual impact that complicated climate predictions for several years afterward. You have sensed how single events can have multiple contradictory effects perhaps in your own experiences. where changes bring both challenges and opportunities, losses and gains intertwined in ways that defy simple categorization, and volcanic extremes embody this complexity at planetary scale. The interconnections extend beyond climate to include disruptions of modern technological systems vulnerable to volcanic ash, aviation networks paralyzed by undetectable ash clouds that abrade engines, satellite communications degraded by ionospheric disturbances, power grids stressed by fine ash, coating insulators and shorting equipment, global positioning systems experiencing signal delays from atmospheric changes. A VI7 eruption near major population or economic centers would cascade through global supply chains, with production halting in affected regions, transportation networks disrupted across continents, financial markets responding to uncertainty with volatility that amplifies economic impacts far beyond direct physical damage. Breathe into this interconnectedness now, feeling how modern civilization's efficiency creates vulnerability to large-scale disruptions. How optimization for normal conditions leaves little redundancy for absorbing shocks, yet also how awareness enables preparation, how scenarios imagined become crises anticipated, rather than disasters completely unexpected. Populations near candidate volcanoes capable of VR7 eruptions range from thousands in remote areas to tens of millions near Indonesian and Philippine systems, where tectonic settings, magma compositions, and eruption histories suggest such events occur every 500 to 1,000 years. These communities live with volcanic risk as part of their landscape, much as coastal residents accept hurricane threats or earthquake-prone regions integrate seismic hazards into building codes and emergency planning, demonstrating how humans adapt to extremes through awareness rather than avoidance, to preparation rather than panic. Ecosystem impacts from extreme eruptions operate across multiple timescales, with immediate devastation giving way to long-term renewal as volcanic materials weather into fertile substrates. Ash blankets kill vegetation through burial and chemical toxicity, yet over decades the same deposits leach nutrients that enrich soils far beyond their original fertility, creating agricultural bounty that draws human settlement despite recurring hazards. The dichotomy of destruction and renewal appears starkly in these extremes. Pyroclastic flows that obliterate forests leave behind pumice deposits that, after centuries of weathering, support lush wool growth, while sulfur dioxide that temporarily cools the planet eventually washes from the atmosphere as acid rain that initially harms ecosystems, yet delivers sulfur and other elements essential for life in appropriate doses. Let your awareness expand to hold these paired opposites. The way volcanic extremes embody creative destruction that philosopher-scientists have long recognized as fundamental to natural systems, where death feeds life, where endings enable beginnings, where catastrophe becomes opportunity over sufficient time. Marine ecosystems respond dramatically to volcanic inputs, with ash fertilizing ocean surfaces through iron and phosphorus additions that spark phytoplankton blooms, temporarily boosting primary productivity, despite initial disruptions from settling material. Large eruptions affect ocean chemistry for years through multiple pathways: ash dissolution releasing nutrients, CO2 absorption changing pH, temperature variations altering circulation patterns, creating cascading effects through food webs that demonstrate how intensely terrestrial and marine systems interlink through atmospheric and hydrological connections. Pause here for deeper immersion into these extreme impacts, allowing your imagination to follow effects from the initial eruption through atmospheric dispersal to ecosystem responses across years and decades. Direct your focus to the concept of scale, how the same processes that create gentle lava flows, when amplified by orders of magnitude, through increased magma flux or gas content, produce world-altering events. Maintain this contemplation through 200 slow breaths, noticing how scale itself creates qualitative differences, how sufficient quantitative change produces new phenomena rather than just bigger versions of familiar patterns. Feel your body's complete surrender to gravity now. No holding anywhere, just peaceful repose as you consider forces that dwarf human scale yet follow comprehensible principles, and when the count completes, rest in that spacious awareness that can hold extremes without being overwhelmed by them, that recognizes intense variations as part of nature's full spectrum rather than anomalies that should not exist. Human responses to volcanic extremes reveal our species' remarkable adaptability and vulnerability in equal measure, with communities recovering from devastating eruptions through resilience that mirrors ecosystem regeneration, rebuilding lives on the same landscapes that destroyed previous incarnations, because the long-term benefits outweigh intermittent catastrophes. Psychological impacts follow their own timeline, with immediate trauma from witnessing destruction giving way to grief, then gradually to acceptance and reconstruction. The mental scars healing like the physical landscape, though never entirely erasing the experience. Studies of populations affected by major eruptions show increased rates of stress disorders, depression, and anxiety, particularly among those who lost family members or livelihoods, yet also document remarkable adaptation where survivors rebuild stronger, more prepared, more conscious of living with active geology, rather than pretending it does not exist. Think of this as humanity learning from experience, translating catastrophe into wisdom that informs future generations. And while the learning comes at terrible cost during extreme events, it accumulates across communities and centuries into cultures adapted to volcanic landscapes through traditions that encode hazard awareness in story, ritual, and practical knowledge. Modern disaster risk reduction efforts attempt to accelerate this learning curve, using historical records and geological evidence to identify hazards before experiencing them directly, implementing monitoring systems that provide warnings instead of relying on pattern recognition from repeated disasters, educating populations about evacuation routes and emergency supplies, so preparation becomes habit rather than panicked improvisation when warnings issue. The challenge of preparing for low probability, high consequence events like VI7 eruptions parallels other existential risks societies struggle to address. Knowing intellectually that such events will occur yet finding motivation difficult when time frames span centuries and immediate concerns dominate attention. Yet even modest preparations, maintaining baseline monitoring of candidate volcanoes, refining geological histories to better forecast future behavior, developing response frameworks for aviation disruptions or climate impacts, reduce vulnerability without requiring unsustainable investments, demonstrating how acknowledging extremes enables pragmatic responses rather than paralysis through either denial or overwhelming fear. Breathe deeply into this balance between awareness and equanimity, recognizing volcanic extremes as real yet rare, powerful yet manageable through preparation, worthy of respect yet not constant worry. The planet has demonstrated remarkable resilience through multiple VI8 events over geological time, with life recovering from each one, ecosystems regenerating, climate systems returning to baseline states after temporary perturbations, reminding us that even the most extreme variations produces are survivable, are part of natural cycles that life has adapted to through billions of years of coexistence with dynamic geology. Our own species, though fragile individually, shows collective resilience through social cooperation, technological innovation, cultural transmission of knowledge, traits that enable not just survival but flourishing, despite occupying a planet that occasionally expresses itself through volcanic intensities that humble our proudest structures. As this exploration of extremes draws towards resolution, recognize how understanding these variations enriches, rather than diminishes appreciation for volcanic phenomena, how comprehending the full spectrum from gentle effusion to supervolcanic eruption reveals Earth as a dynamic system operating across vast scales yet following consistent principles. The intensities we have contemplated, VI scales reaching 8, global atmospheric effects, ecosystem transformations, human adaptations to recurring catastrophes, demonstrate natural processes amplified rather than fundamentally different phenomena, reminding us that quantitative changes eventually produce qualitative shifts, where familiar patterns become unfamiliar extremes, requiring new categories and concepts to comprehend. You have perhaps experienced this principle in growth moments, when gradual changes accumulate until suddenly you recognize yourself as transformed, when slight adjustments in perspective or habit compound until your entire worldview shifts, and volcanic extremes embody this same principle at geological scale where magma composition, gas content, and eruption rate combine in particular configurations to produce events transcending normal experience, yet ultimately explicable through the same fluid dynamics, thermodynamics, and material properties governing all volcanic activity. Let this understanding settle now, integrating extreme variations into your sense of Earth's fiery psychology as the upper bounds of expression rather than aberrations, the peaks that define the spectrum's extent without negating the more common moderate manifestations that comprise the overwhelming majority of volcanic activity. Now settle your awareness on the aftermath of these extremes, the subtle easing as impacts integrate into renewal, observing any imagined calm washing over the landscape as recovery begins. Maintain this gentle hold through 250 soft breaths, surrendering fully to the release that follows intensity, allowing all tensions to fade like ash settling from stratospheric heights back to earth where it will, over decades and centuries, weather into soil that feeds new forests. Feel that same settling in your body, every cell releasing its daily holding, every muscle softening into complete rest. And when the count completes, remain in that peaceful integration where extremes have been acknowledged, understood, and released, making space for the renewal and harmony that naturally follow intensity in Earth's eternal cycles of transformation. From these profound peaks, where the Earth's fiery intensities have surged and subsided, like a deep, cathartic breath, let the mind soften now toward the gentle renewal that follows, the resolution where chaos dissolves into quiet regeneration. But for now, rest in this nuanced intensity, this understanding of extremes that neither overwhelms nor trivializes, allowing it to guide you seamlessly toward the restorative close ahead, where volcanic wonders complete their full arc from emergence through intensity to integration, demonstrating how Earth manages its most extreme expressions within larger patterns of balance and renewal that have sustained life through billions of years of geological dynamism. From these profound peaks, where the Earth's fiery intensities have surged and subsided like a deep, cathartic breath, let the mind soften now toward the gentle renewal that follows, the resolution where chaos dissolves into quiet regeneration, and the planet weaves its threads back into full integration and natural harmony. Imagine the landscape after the storm, ash settling like a soft blanket over the scorched earth, not as an end but as a fertile cradle for new life to stir, whispering of resilience and rebirth. Just as our own moments of upheaval often give way to profound clarity and growth, releasing what no longer serves to make space for fresh beginnings, so to do volcanic aftermaths reveal the Earth's enduring capacity for harmony, nurturing ecosystems and atmospheres in a cycle that sustains all living things. Allow your awareness to ease fully into this restorative phase, your breath a soft echo of the planet's quiet rhythms, as we explore the serene unfolding of renewal with awe and tranquility. In the wake of eruptions, the process of resolution begins with the subtle settling of ash and debris, transforming immediate devastation into a foundation for ecological rebirth that unfolds across decades like a patient meditation on impermanence and return. Volcanic ash, that fine-grained material ejected during explosive events, lands across landscapes in layers ranging from millimeters to meters thick, initially appearing as grey desolation that buries vegetation and chokes streams with sediment. Yet this same material carries within it the seeds of future abundance, minerals that have not been depleted by previous plant growth, elements essential for life locked in glass-like particles that will slowly weather and release their gifts. Think of ash as Earth's gift wrapped in temporary hardship, its value hidden until time and water work their patient alchemy to transform sterile deposits into some of the planet's most productive soils. You have witnessed similar transformations perhaps in your own life, where difficult periods that seemed purely destructive eventually revealed themselves as necessary clearings. Spaces where new growth could emerge precisely because old patterns had been swept away, and volcanic renewal embodies this principle at landscape scale. Within weeks of ash deposition, the first responses begin. Surviving organisms probe the new surface. Seeds carried by wind or water test where the conditions permit germination. Pioneer species adapted to harsh environments detect opportunities others cannot yet exploit. Nitrogen-fixing plants often lead this vanguard. Species like lupines that can extract nitrogen from the atmosphere through symbiotic relationships with soil bacteria, gradually building organic matter in soils that start with almost none. 25 years after Mount St. Helens 1980 eruption, soil carbon content in ash deposits had increased from essentially zero to measurable levels under colonizing lupines, with these hardy pioneers accumulating organic matter at rates that prepared the ground for less resilient species to follow. Breathe into this patient, unfolding now, feeling how renewal follows its own timeline that cannot be rushed, yet proceeds with quiet certainty, much as your own healing from life's disruptions follows rhythms beyond conscious control. Your body and psyche knowing how to restore themselves when given time and gentle conditions. The speed of ecosystem recovery depends on multiple factors: thickness of ash deposits, the severity of initial damage, proximity to seed sources, climate conditions that either facilitate or hinder establishment. Thin ash layers on tephra surfaces allow relatively rapid vegetation return, with grasses and herbs emerging within years, shrubs within a decade, forests beginning to re-establish within decades. Mount Kelud in Indonesia, which erupts on 15 to 37-year cycles, demonstrates this recovery dynamic repeatedly, with vegetation bouncing back between eruptions faster each time as soil fertility builds through successive ash additions, creating landscapes where destruction and abundance alternate in patterns local communities have learned to anticipate and adapt to. Thicker deposits or solidified lava flows require longer recovery periods, sometimes centuries, for substantial vegetation to establish as rainfall slowly weathers rock into particles fine enough to hold moisture and provide roof folds for pioneering plants. Yet even these seemingly barren surfaces harbor microscopic life, bacteria and archaea that colonize within years, lichens and mosses that gradually build thin soil layers in cracks and depressions, each stage preparing conditions for the next in successional sequences that demonstrate nature's patient persistence. The forests surrounding Mount Fuji in Japan, lush and mysterious landscapes that have inspired artists for centuries, emerged over hundreds of years following the volcano's last major eruption in the 9th century, proving that given sufficient time, Even the most devastated landscapes can support rich ecosystems through the slow accumulation of organic matter and the weathering of volcanic materials into fertile substrates. Let your imagination now picture this gradual greening, the first pale shoots piercing through grey ash like forgotten dreams awakening in dawnlight, their tender leaves unfurling despite harsh conditions, driven by life's imperative to occupy every available niche. The air clears as winds disperse the finest ash particles, and rainfall washes surfaces clean, revealing the underlying textures of a land transformed by volcanic processes, yet fundamentally still itself, still responsive to the same forces of sun and water and wind that shape all landscapes. Sensory whispers abound in recovering ecosystems. The soft rustle of pioneer grasses bending in breeze, the faint scent of fresh growth mixing with mineral odors from weathering rock, the returning songs of birds finding new habitats among emerging vegetation, each sound and smell a celebration of resilience, a testimony to life's refusal to surrender even temporarily conquered ground. Pause here for a gentle immersion, an opportunity to integrate these renewal patterns into your deepest awareness. Direct your attention to an imagined volcanic landscape, 1 year, 10 years, 50 years after eruption, seeing how each time frame shows progressive healing, bare ash giving way to scattered plants becoming meadows, meadows transitioning toward forests as organic matter accumulates and soil develops structure and fertility. Notice how this mirrors your own healing from challenges, how immediate aftermath gives way to early recovery, gives way to full restoration, each phase building on the previous in ways that cannot be skipped yet unfold naturally when interference does not block them. Maintain this temporal visualization through 280 soft breaths, counting each one as a year of geological time, feeling decades and centuries compress into moments of contemplation. Allow your body to rest completely now, no tension anywhere, just gravity holding you in perfect comfort as your mind witnesses renewal unfolding at nature's patient pace. And when the count completes, rest in that peaceful knowing that healing happens, that renewal follows destruction as surely as spring follows winter, as calm follows storm in the eternal cycles that govern both landscapes and inner worlds. The fertility of volcanic soils becomes legendary over time, with regions like Indonesia's Java and Bali supporting some of Earth's densest agricultural populations, precisely because recurring eruptions continually replenish soil nutrients that intensive farming would otherwise deplete. Volcanic soils, technically called andisols, develop distinctive properties through weathering of ash and pumice, high capacity to retain water yet excellent drainage, unusual ability to sequester carbon from the atmosphere through interactions with poorly crystalline minerals, abundant essential elements like phosphorus, potassium, iron, and trace metals that plants require in small amounts yet cannot obtain from many other soil types. These characteristics make volcanic soils extraordinarily productive once the initial weathering period of 2 to 4 years transforms raw ash into developable agricultural substrate, with crop yields often exceeding those from non-volcanic soils by substantial margins. Think of volcanic renewal as nature's way of redistributing mineral wealth from deep within Earth's interior to the surface where life can access it, a planetary circulation that, while dramatically disruptive in the short term, sustains ecosystems over geological time through periodic refreshment of depleted soils. Coffee, one of the world's most beloved beverages, grows exceptionally well on volcanic slopes throughout the tropics precisely because Andes soils provide the complex mineral nutrition coffee plants require for producing flavorful beans. The same holds for numerous crops, rice, vegetables, fruits, benefiting from volcanic soil's unique chemistry, when properly managed through techniques that work with, rather than against the material's distinctive properties. Indonesian farmers near Mount Sanabang, which has erupted repeatedly since 2010, have developed adapted strategies for continuing agriculture despite recurring ash falls, including reducing cultivation areas during active phases, washing ash from plants, selecting quick maturing varieties, applying organic amendments to accelerate ash weathering into productive soil. Breathe into this creative adaptation now, feeling how human communities demonstrate remarkable flexibility when necessity demands. How challenge becomes teacher and adversity becomes opportunity for those willing to learn from experience rather than being defeated by it. The integration of volcanic processes into long-term ecosystem functioning creates balances that operate across multiple timescales, with short-term disruptions offset by long-term fertility gains. Immediate loss of vegetation offset by enhanced productivity once ecosystems re-establish. Research on volcanic landscapes worldwide shows that biodiversity can actually increase following eruptions as new habitats appear. Pioneer species create ecological niches unavailable in undisturbed systems, and the mosaic of different age disturbances creates spatial complexity that supports diverse communities. Species adapted to volcanic environments, nitrogen fixers, rapid colonizers, organisms tolerant of harsh chemical conditions, thrive in these dynamic settings, contributing to regional biodiversity, even as they transform bare substrates into habitable landscapes through their activities. Marine ecosystems respond to volcanic inputs through complex pathways that ultimately enhance productivity despite initial disturbances from ash settling into coastal waters. Iron and phosphorus released from ash dissolution fertilize ocean surfaces, stimulating phytoplankton blooms that form the base of marine food webs, supporting fish populations that feed seabirds and marine mammals in cascading effects that ripple through entire ecosystems. Volcanic islands emerging from seafloor eruptions create new habitat for coral reef development, with underwater lava flows providing substrate for colonization by algae, invertebrates, and eventually complex reef communities that become biodiversity hotspots attracting species from surrounding regions.